What is it what is the God you believe in?
I think that the claim that Christ is the embodiment of the prophet and the laws,
So you believe that Jesus was
God,
God?
As some of you may know, Jordan Peterson, the Diary of a CEO, had a podcast 2 days ago, and my brother sent me the podcast yesterday, and I got to watching it this morning. They go over some very deep topics when it comes to marriage and sex before marriage, as well as living together before marriage and sexlessness in marriage. That's not what we're going to be talking about in today's video. I encourage you to check the link out below and watch the full video. But Jordan and Stephen get into some topics about God and the Bible and how we got here. That is what we're going to be talking about in today's video.
yeah, definitely.
I think Islam. I think I read Islam's on the rise amongst young men, or it's the dominant religion that young men are being drawn to. But in the context of what we've described, that person who sat on the edge of their bed, do they need religion? And I'm being intentional not to say God. I'm saying religion.
Well, these are hard things to do on your own, right? I mean, you only have the span of your life, and the probability that you can figure out how to live merely as a consequence of consulting your own limited experience is zero. It's too complicated.
So the religion might be your society, it might be your friends, your family. In this context,
That's part of it. That would be the more structured part, the more traditional part. You need the traditional stories. That's why I wrote this book, is to indicate, well, at least in part, well, what the stories are and also what they mean. It's not only that. It's not only what they mean. It's how knowing what they mean changes your life. So, for example,
Now, here's the thing about Jordan Peterson. He's on his faith journey. He's finding what it means to be a believer, and I don't think he's come to full terms with it yet, right? And in my opinion, I think he may be trying to be vague on purpose until he gets his head wrapped around what he truly believes. Now, what Steve said to Jordan was about friends and family and places or something or another being religion. And I just don't think that that's a good enough answer for Jordan to have glazed over like he did. I think that's something that he should have focused on and said, your religion does come from a relationship with God. I think far too often, sometimes we're too sensitive to offending someone and respecting their beliefs. I think on a platform this large, you have to tell the truth, because even in the beginning of this interview, Jordan brought up the fact of how he has lost some opportunities by saying what he truly believes in. And I think in this case, if Jordan truly believed in Jesus and the Bible and religion in a large degree, he would have stuck to the truth regardless. But let's hear what his point was that he wanted to make.
in the story of Abraham, God comes to Abraham. Okay, now, questions emerge from that statement. What do you mean, God, and how does he come to Abraham? What the hell does that mean? Well, the story lays that out. The God that comes to Abraham is the voice of adventure. It's a definition. So this is a good thing to know. God is the voice of adventure. Okay, so now let's think about this a little bit. So the God that's the voice of adventure is the God of the forefathers of Abraham, the father. He's a patriarchal spirit. Okay, if you're a good father, you speak with the voice of adventure to your sons. Obviously, you're encouraging them. It's like, get the hell out there, make something of yourself. Why do you do that? Because you have this little kid and you think, get at it, man. Let's see what you can be. And so that's that voice of the benevolent father, and that's the spirit of the ancestors. And behind that, there's the God who's the voice of adventure. If you pursue the spirit of adventure, there will be things you have to give up. Right, you know that. I mean, you're taking steps. We'd even say that. Steps forward in your life. What do you mean forward? What do you mean steps? Well, they're little adventures you have that transform you and transform your circumstances, okay? You have that adventure and you have to change as a consequence of it. You have to give up your immaturity.
I think the best way to explain this in a Christian context is the journey of sanctification, right? As you walk with the Lord, as you mature in your faith, as you mature in Bible knowledge, you understand that there's things that God doesn't like We all go on this journey. There's things that you have to give up. There's things that are sin that you may not have known were sinful. And then not only that, but as you mature and you're not a newborn Christian anymore, you start to realize that I can't just blow up and get mad when I get mad and I'm angry and just cuss people out. Or when someone does something to me that I don't like, I have to forgive them. These are all things that as we mature in our Christianity and as we mature in our walk, we have to conform, we have to let go of things, and we have to be sanctified. I think this is probably the best explanation of what Jordan is trying to say. He just goes about it in a really kind of roundabout way.
That you can take advantage of this new opportunity. Okay, and that changes you. Now you're a slightly different person. Now a new horizon of opportunity opens up. You have to make a sacrifice. It's like, okay, looks like if I'm going to do this, I can no longer afford this. Well, Abraham changes so dramatically that he gets a new name. He starts as Abram, and he ends as Abraham. Abraham is the father of nations. So what's the moral? If you pursue the spirit of adventure and make the proper sacrifices, you become the father of nations. Right? That's true.
That's true for Abraham. I can't say that it's the same for all people. What I do know is that if you do follow the Lord, he's calling it the spirit of adventure. If you do follow the Lord, he has a purpose for you. He has a will for your life. He has things that only he can know for you, but they are beyond anything that you could ever ask, think, or imagine. So in that sense, it is an adventure. It is something exciting. You should get excited about walking with the Lord. You should be thrilled to see what he has in plan for you, right? But there's going to be a lot of ups and downs. It's not just a step up. There's going to be some ups, downs, backwards, side to side. There's a lot of things that's going to come with your walk with the Lord. And he's not going to show you all of this either. Because a lot of times, if we knew the difficulties that lie ahead, we'd avoid it altogether. And through those difficulties, through adversity, through perseverance, we're molded and shaped into the people that God created us to be. We get grit and we get character that's built through these difficulties. It's all part of the journey because it helps us to be stronger people. It helps us to be more resilient. It helps us to know that if something were to arise like this again, we've done it before. We made it through it with God the first time. And then not only that, but we can lead others as they go through those same types of difficulties along their journey as well.
There's a really interesting, I grew up as religious until I was 18. I say religious because the term's difficult to define to me, but my mother was believed in God. She was Christian. My father's Christian. And at about 18, I started reading a lot of Richard Dawkins' books and other people's books. And I got to this place where I think I was atheist by the definition of I didn't think there was necessarily a God. And now I find myself in this place of being agnostic. Now, when I think about the Bible as a compass or as a guide, the part of my brain that's like rooted in this, like, I need evidence for everything, goes, is this just a book that a bunch of men wrote thousands of years ago when they were sat around a campfire or whatever? And if it is, then it's just one person's opinion. As much as any self-help book on a shelf is one person's opinion.
See, this is the dangerous part of journeying off into the wilderness, looking for evidence, looking for truth, listening to one man over another man. You heard what he said. He grew up in a Christian household until he read a Richard Dawkins book. And that's how a lot of people get led astray. They don't believe in Christianity for one reason or another, and then they find something that aligns with what they want to believe in. Now he said he finds himself as agnostic. He doesn't believe nor disbelieve. He wants evidence. He wants proof. Faith is the substance of things unseen. So in order for you to even have faith in a God that you can't see, it's going to require faith. But if you're a person that's analytical and you need something tangible, you'll never believe in the Lord.
Well, okay, let's take that claim apart. I mean, yes, it is stories that people came up with thousands of years ago, but no, definitely not one person's opinion.
That's right.
100% not. Because these stories have been transmitted over millennia and organized and edited and transformed by a very large number of people.
And not only that, it's not ideas of man. The Bible is written by the Holy Spirit through men. So this is God's words on paper. He's just using man's body to write the words for him.
So it's, at minimum, it's a massive collective effort. And it's a collective effort undertaken by arguably the most literate and intelligent people there are, and that'd be the Jews.
Why would I listen to the Bible more than I'd listen to something Socrates wrote or any philosopher from?
Oh, there's a huge overlap between the Greek philosophical tradition and the Christian tradition. I mean, Western culture is the amalgamation of Greece, Jerusalem, and Rome. So, and the early Christians saw tremendous parallels between Christian theology and Greek philosophy.
Where do you think we come from? You know, you've got the like Darwinism, evolutionary theory of we've evolved, etc. Then there's the more religious view that, you know, if you really think about the First Testament and the Early Testament and the stories of the, you know, creation, people think, you know, maybe we were just popped out of nowhere. But where do we youth believe that we come from? Do you believe a God put us here, or do you believe that? Do you believe evolution is true? Do you believe both are true?
You have to read the book.
Yeah, but I want to. Yeah.
I know, it's very, but I'm not trying to be a smart aleck in that response. It's a complicated answer.
Yeah.
Right? It's a complicated answer. I think that we're guided by the spirit of meaning. Okay? I think that's also our deepest instinct.
That's somewhat Darwinism.
Well, I had a rule for this book, is I didn't make any claims about the biblical stories that I couldn't justify scientifically. I don't think there's a conflict.
And that's one of the things that people find so difficult about Jordan Peterson. They want him to just be straightforward. What is it that you believe? Why do you believe what you believe? What does this mean to you? What does that mean to you? And he's never really 100% this is what I believe. I think that people find that difficult because they just want certainty. They want to know what they want to know. A lot of times people put themselves in a place where they feel like their desires matter more than another person's. And so because people want Jordan to be flat out, hey, this is what I believe, this is how I think, and he doesn't, they get mad about that. But we're not owed anything to anyone or from anyone. So we got to take what we can get.
I think that viewing the biblical stories as an amalgam of superstitious proto-scientific theories is absurd. I don't think there's any evidence for that at all. These are stories.
So do you
Stories and scientific hypotheses aren't the same thing. The Lord of the Rings is not a scientific hypothesis, but that doesn't mean it's not true.
Do you believe my great-great-great-great-granddad was an amoeba?
Well, if you were a sperm at one point. I mean, it's not that implausible. We all come from single-celled organisms.
This is so. I'm asking these questions because
Yeah.
I'm genuinely it's like I'm genuinely wrestling with a bunch of big existential questions that I've actually only been wrestling with maybe for like I'd say a year.
Yeah.
So it's very fresh for me. And it's funny.
Yeah.
My arc here is religious Christian up until maybe 18,
Yeah.
like staunch atheist for 2 years to the point that it was like my identity.
Yeah.
And then like
Yeah.
let go of that, drifted for a couple of years, and find myself at this really interesting point where I'm like back at the door of like, okay, let's look at some of these answers again.
Yeah. Well, that.
And this is the perfect opportunity for Jordan to deliver him the gospel. Hey, Steve, let me tell you what the gospel really means. Yes, you may have grew up in church, but did you know that Jesus died for your sins for you to have eternal life? Did you know that almost everything that we do on a daily basis has some type of sin based around it if we're not mindful of what we're doing? The person that you live with, because I know Steve has a girlfriend that he lives with. The person that you live with, you're sinning because you live together. I'm sure that you have sex. You're sinning because you sleep together. You're sinning personally because you're causing her to sin by allowing her to live in sin with you. And this is just one piece of a sinful lifestyle, but Jesus came to die for that sin. You can be forgiven. You got to take course correction, but you can be forgiven. This is the perfect opportunity for Jordan to lay it out for him. Let's see what he does.
That's
Good
exactly
luck.
why I wrote this book, because I know that that's the time, and it's not just the time for you. That's the time that we're in.
Yeah, it's the time we're in. 100%.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. Well, it's partly because the Enlightenment has exhausted itself. Partly because it was wrong.
It's failed us, the individualism.
Well, I think exhausted is a better word, because it wasn't like the Enlightenment was without its benefits. We
When you
made
say the
immense
Enlightenment-
technological progress. The materialist reductionism of the atheist scientist.
Okay.
It's
Yeah.
not right.
Yeah.
Factually, they were wrong. Their theory of perception was wrong. They're wrong. We see the world through a story. We do not see the world as a collection of facts. They're wrong.
They're wrong. That's pretty deep. A lot of people stick to this atheistic belief, this point that Jordan Peterson is making. And we also see it on other levels as well. People are trying to be enlightened with the quantum physics and the metaphysics and taking this scientifical approach to faith, taking the scientifical approach to the deeper meaning of why we're here. And that's not going to be where you find it. As Jordan said a moment ago, the spirit of meaning. Everyone wants to know their purpose, and the purpose comes from God. The purpose is given to us by the Lord. We are born with a purpose that we were designed for in our mother's womb. Before we were even created, God knew the purpose. And so trying to find that in science is not going to work. And that's why Jordan says that we've been let down and they're wrong. I think that's a great take from Jordan, although he didn't deliver the gospel to Steve.
You see, the postmodernists figured this out, and that's why the postmodernists had a walloping influence on culture. Now, I'm no fan of the postmodernists for a variety of reasons, but their insistence that we see the world through a story, that they're right. That's right.
I agree. I mean, if you obviously read the book *Sapiens* by Yuval Harari, and his central point is that what bound us as humans and stopped us being these scattered chimps was stories. They bind us together. So I completely understand that we need a story. It's how everything, money, governments, etc., function. But what that story is, now I can agree
It's
that
a story of voluntary sacrifice.
There you go.
100% agree that humans need that. There's no chance that we'd be here
No,
otherwise.
you're
And
not
it's a
listening. You're not listening, Steve. The story is voluntary sacrifice. Jesus voluntarily went to the cross, died for my sin and your sin, and all sin to be forgiven. That way we can have a place in heaven. We can have a relationship with the Father. We no longer need a high priest to be the mediator. So we don't need a priest. We don't need anyone to say, hey, come to me and I'll help you talk to God. Now we have that the veil has been torn. We have the opportunity to go directly to the Father in prayer. But not only that, Jesus did it. And he would do it again, even if you were the only person. He would do it all over again. There's no one on this planet that can voluntarily sacrifice themselves the way that Jesus did for us. And that's the W you take right there.
values and principles. Now, those values and principles are often found in religion, but do they, and a belief in a God, but do they have to be?
Yes.
Could they be found in, could I theoretically make a new religion where me and my friends all unite against a set of values, sacrifice, giving,
That's a great question.
parenthood?
Well, this is what Nietzsche basically presupposed in some ways. So
I'm going to just say that would be a cult, honestly.
when Nietzsche observed that God had died, say in 1850 or thereabouts, his medication for that, his warning was, we'll descend into nihilism and communist totalitarianism. And that was exactly right. Maybe a mindless hedonism in there too. Dostoevsky concentrated more on that. Nietzsche said, we'll have to create our own values. We'll have to become, that's what the Superman is, the Nietzschean Superman, the man who creates his own values.
Mm-hmm.
Try. See what happens. You can't do it. You can't create your own values.
That's
because
right.
values are real.
And not only that, but all good that is in us comes from the Lord. It's implanted to us in our DNA, right? All the good that comes from anything in this planet. So you can't say it's my good morals. You're not good. Not one person is good. All good comes from God. All bad comes from the enemy. You got to understand everything is spiritual. Now, in this clip right here, Steve gets down to the meat of it. He's asking Jordan, what's your belief? What God do you believe in? And we're going to listen to Jordan's response.
A simple way that I can understand. Do you believe in a man in the sky, God? Do you believe in it's a
Well,
force?
that's not as primitive a conceptualization as the atheists would have you believe.
What is it you believe?
Well, there isn't anything more complex in the known universe than a human brain.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want a model for reality as such, like proclaiming that it has something akin to the structure of the human psyche is not an absurd claim, given that that is the most complex thing by far that we know of. By far.
So what is it you believe?
Well, I've been explaining it.
But I mean,
I did say, I mentioned something which we skipped over very quickly because I introduced it too rapidly. Postmodernists figured out that we live in a story, but then they leapt to a faulty conclusion of two forms. Well, three. There's no uniting story. That was one of their conclusions. In fact, the definition of postmodernism is skepticism of meta-narratives. There's no uniting story. It's like, well, that's a stupid theory because there's no union. So what? There's just diversity. Well, we worship diversity now in this utterly foolish manner. There's no
Speak, Jordan, speak, bro.
difference between diversity and war. Without a uniting narrative, there's nothing but war. So, no, that's not going to work. Wrong. Hedonistic self-gratification. There's Michel Foucault for you to a T. It's like, why is that wrong? Why can't people just do what they want with whoever they want all the time? Because
the Bible clearly speaks out about hedonism and sexual immorality and just a debaucherous lifestyle and things that are gratifying to the flesh, but things that don't honor the Lord.
it defeats itself, and quickly. It's not a sustainable game. If it's all about you and your whims, I don't want to be anywhere near you. And that won't be so good for you. That's not going to work. Power. That's really where the postmodernists landed with their, what would you say, temptation to turn towards Marx. It's all about power. It's like, first of all, that's probably a confession, if that's what you believe. And second, no, it's not. Try tyrannizing your wife and see how well that works for you. Try tyrannizing yourself and see how successful you are. Power's not the game. Okay, what's the game? What's the story? I mentioned earlier, it's voluntary self-sacrifice. Right, you offer yourself up in the service of something higher. That's the basis of society. That's the basis of psychological stability. The Christian insistence is that that's the basis of the world.
I'm going to ask you again because I want to be clear. Is what is the God you believe in?
And this is what I meant earlier in the video when I said that Jordan never gives us a clear answer of what he believes in. He never says, yes, I'm a Christian. I believe in God. I believe in Jesus. That's why Steve has asked him. This is the third time that he's asked him now. What is your belief? And even Alex O'Connor, popular atheist, had Jordan Peterson on his channel, and he asked him the same thing. And he was like, look, stop beating around the bush. What do you believe in? And Jordan still beat around the bush.
I think that the claim that Christ is the embodiment of the prophet and the laws, I think that's true.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
That's complicated. It's very, very complicated. But I think it's true.
so you believe that Jesus was
God?
God?
Yeah.
This is the closest I've ever heard an answer.
I think if you understand what that means, that it's indisputable. I'll give you a brief explanation of why.
Let's go, Jordan.
Christ takes the sins of the world onto himself.
Yes, sir.
So that means all the problems that there are his problems.
Tell him the gospel,
Right.
Jordan.
Okay, so the idea there is that there's no difference between making that assumption and then actually beginning to address those problems. And there's no difference between that which best addresses the problems of mankind and the divine. Those are the same thing. And I can't see how that can be otherwise, because the contrary hypothesis would be that you would adapt best to your life by avoiding things that are difficult and terrifying. And no one believes that. And so the pattern of the passion, this is the voluntary self-sacrifice issue taken to its extreme. The pattern of the passion is the decision to voluntarily confront and welcome anything that happens to you, no matter what it is. And that's a terrible thing to ask or endeavor to undertake. But, well, the alternative is to shrink away. Well, the spirit of shrinking away is the divine. It's like, I don't think so. Like that's preposterous. The spirit of unlimited courage? Well, that's not a bad start for a definition of what constitutes the divine. The highest possible value.
Has your belief in God, religion, been shaken at all?
Oh, yes. Definitely.
Because you've been,
Constantly.
over the last year and a half, 2 years, you've been through a particularly difficult time with losing people in your life that are sort of foundational to you. Tammy as well.
Oh, yeah. Well, and I was in extreme pain for 3 years. Right. I went through 3 years where every minute of my life was worse than any minute I had ever had previous to that. It was terrible. And did I lose faith? Was it questioned, challenged? Absolutely. Absolutely. It just became absurd. It was absurd. So many things had gone off the rails. My wife was dying, my daughter was ill. Things had blown up around me in 50 different ways, and I was like seriously in pain.
The beauty of it all, though, is that Jesus was there. God was with you all through all that. And Tammy didn't die, and his daughter's not sick anymore. And through all that, your faith gets stronger. And I know this is a perfect example of what I was saying earlier in the video when I was saying that people wouldn't necessarily go on this faith journey if they saw the difficult things that they would have to go through to get a strong faith, right? This is a perfect example of what I meant by that. Now, as you see, Jordan didn't truly answer. What he did say was good enough, though, that he does believe that Jesus is God. That's good enough. That's about as good as an admission to, that's about as good of an admission of Jordan Peterson's faith in Jesus Christ that we're probably ever going to get, because it's the best one I've heard thus far. So there you have it, guys. This is the first time that I've ever heard Jordan Peterson say that Jesus was God and really discuss his faith in a more deeper meaning. I'm so thrilled. I'm so happy to see this from Jordan Peterson because he's got a huge platform and a large influence, and he's very well spoken and he's very intelligent when it comes down to things. And for him to be one that admits that Jesus is God is a huge step in the right direction for a lot of people that tend to be more learned or studious or I need facts, I need evidence, as if the Bible wasn't evidence, wasn't fact enough already. So that's going to do it for this one. What are you guys' thoughts about this? Do you think this is a good step for Christianity? Or do you think this makes no difference whatsoever? Leave it in the comment section down below, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Until then, God bless.